The morning sun cast long shadows across the corridors of Windsor Castle as King Charles walked slowly toward his private study. His footsteps echoed against the ancient stone walls, each step feeling heavier than the last. The weight of recent events pressed down on his shoulders like an invisible crown made of lead rather than gold. For weeks now, the palace had been buzzing with whispered conversations and worried glances. The king's health concerns had been mounting, though the official statements remained carefully optimistic. Behind closed doors, however, the reality was far more complex. Charles found himself facing challenges that tested not only his physical strength, but also his emotional resilience. As he entered his study, Charles noticed the morning newspapers neatly arranged on his mahogany desk. The headlines spoke of his recent public appearances, analyzing every gesture and expression for signs of weakness or strength. He had learned long ago not to read too deeply into media speculation, but lately, even he couldn't ignore the growing concerns about his well-being. The door opened quietly, and his private secretary entered with a steaming cup of tea. "Your Majesty, the Princess of Wales has requested a private audience this morning," the secretary announced with practiced formality. Charles nodded, feeling a slight lift in his spirits. Kate had always possessed a unique ability to bring clarity to complex situations. In recent months, Kate had emerged as an increasingly important figure within the royal family. Her natural grace and genuine warmth had won her not only public admiration, but also the deep respect of her family members. Unlike many who approached the king with formal protocol and carefully rehearsed words, Kate spoke with honest concern and practical wisdom. As Charles waited for Kate's arrival, his mind wandered to Camilla. His beloved wife had been struggling with her own challenges lately. The constant scrutiny and pressure of royal life seemed to be wearing on her more heavily than usual. She had begun withdrawing from public engagements, citing minor health issues and scheduling conflicts, but Charles knew the truth ran deeper. Camilla had always been a private person thrust into an intensely public role. While she had adapted admirably over the years, the recent increases in responsibilities and expectations had taken their toll. Charles had noticed her spending more time in their private quarters, avoiding the bustling activity that typically filled their days with meetings, ceremonies, and state functions. The gentle knock on the study door interrupted his thoughts. Kate entered with her characteristic warm smile, though Charles could see the genuine concern in her eyes. She moved with the easy confidence that had made her such a natural fit for royal life. Yet her approach remained refreshingly unpretentious. "Good morning, Charles," she said, using the more personal address they had adopted for private conversations. "I hope you don't mind my requesting this meeting. I've been thinking about some things and I felt we should talk." Charles gestured toward the comfortable chairs near the window, away from the formal desk setting. "Of course, Kate. Your insights are always welcome. I suspect you have something important on your mind." As they settled into their seats, Kate's expression grew more serious. "I've been watching how hard you've been pushing yourself lately, and I'm concerned. Not just as a member of the family, but as someone who cares deeply about your well-being." Her words carried the weight of genuine affection and respect. Over the years, Kate had developed a special relationship with Charles, one built on mutual understanding and shared dedication to the monarchy's future. She had proven herself to be not just a dutiful daughter-in-law, but a trusted advisor whose judgment Charles had come to value highly. "I've also noticed that Camilla seems to be pulling back from many of her usual activities," Kate continued carefully. "I wonder if she might benefit from having some of the pressure reduced, at least temporarily." Charles appreciated Kate's diplomatic approach to what was clearly a delicate subject. She wasn't criticizing or making demands. Instead, she was offering observations and gently suggesting solutions. This was exactly the kind of thoughtful communication that had made Kate such an asset to the royal family. The conversation that followed would mark the beginning of a significant shift in the dynamics of the royal household. Kate's willingness to step forward during a challenging time, combined with her natural leadership abilities, was about to reshape how the family navigated its responsibilities and relationships. As they talked, Charles found himself feeling grateful for Kate's presence in their lives. Her combination of intelligence, compassion, and practical wisdom reminded him of the qualities that had made his own mother such an effective monarch. Perhaps it was time to rely more heavily on those family members who were ready and willing to shoulder additional Responsibilities. The morning meeting would prove to be just the beginning of a transformation that would affect not only the immediate royal family, but also the public perception of the monarchy itself. Kate's emergence as a central figure was about to accelerate in ways that none of them could have fully anticipated. The afternoon brought an unexpected turn of events that would accelerate the changes already beginning to unfold within the royal household. Charles had been resting in his private chambers when urgent news arrived through his security detail. A major international incident required immediate royal response, and the scheduled state visit from a key ally nation needed delicate handling. Under normal circumstances, Charles would have immediately thrown himself into the demanding schedule of meetings, ceremonies, and diplomatic discussions. However, his conversation with Kate that morning had planted seeds of reflection about sustainable approaches to royal duties. The timing seemed almost providential, an opportunity to test new ways of managing the monarchy's responsibilities. Kate received the urgent summons to Buckingham Palace while she was reviewing her children's school schedules at Kensington Palace. The call came directly from Charles himself, something that immediately signaled the seriousness of the situation. His voice carried a mixture of determination and uncertainty that she had rarely heard before. "Kate, I need your help with something significant," Charles said without his usual formal pleasantries. "We have a diplomatic situation that requires immediate attention, and I believe this might be the perfect opportunity for you to take on a more prominent role." The request was both thrilling and daunting. Kate had been gradually increasing her involvement in state affairs, but this would represent a substantial step forward. She quickly arranged for the children's care and made her way to the palace, her mind racing with possibilities and concerns. Meanwhile, Camilla sat in her favorite reading room at Clarence's house, surrounded by books and personal mementos that brought her comfort. She had declined to join the emergency meetings, citing a persistent headache that wasn't entirely fabricated. The truth was that she felt overwhelmed by the constant demands and scrutiny that came with her position. The past few months had been particularly challenging for Camilla. Every public appearance was analyzed and criticized, every gesture interpreted through the lens of her complex history with the royal family. While she had won over many skeptics through years of dedicated service, the pressure never seemed to diminish. If anything, it had intensified as Charles faced his own health challenges. When Kate arrived at Buckingham Palace, she found Charles in the blue drawing room with several senior advisors and foreign ministry officials. The atmosphere was tense but focused, with everyone clearly aware that important decisions needed to be made quickly. Charles looked up as Kate entered, and she could see relief in his expression. "Gentlemen, I'd like you to meet the Princess of Wales, who will be taking the lead on several aspects of our response to this situation," Charles announced with quiet authority. The officials exchanged glances but quickly adapted to this unexpected development. Kate's reputation for competence and grace had preceded her. Over the next several hours, Kate demonstrated exactly why Charles had such confidence in her abilities. She listened carefully to the briefings, asked insightful questions, and offered practical solutions that impressed even the most experienced diplomats. Her approach was fresh yet respectful of protocol, innovative while remaining grounded in royal tradition. The foreign dignitaries who had been scheduled to meet with Charles were informed that the Princess of Wales would be playing an enhanced role in their visit. Rather than disappointment, this news was met with genuine enthusiasm. Kate's international reputation had been growing steadily, and many foreign leaders were eager to work with her directly. As the day progressed, Charles found himself stepping back more naturally than he had expected. Watching Kate handle complex diplomatic discussions with such skill and confidence allowed him to focus on the broader strategic decisions without getting caught up in every tactical detail. It was a revelation that both surprised and pleased him. The evening brought a private dinner where Kate, Charles, and a small group of senior advisors could debrief and plan for the days ahead. The conversation was animated and productive, with Kate offering insights that drew on her unique perspective as someone who had grown into royal life rather than being born into it. "I think we've discovered something important today," Charles said as the evening wound down. "Kate, your ability to connect with people while maintaining appropriate dignity is exactly what the monarchy needs right now." Kate felt a mixture of pride and responsibility at these words. She understood that this day represented more than just helping with a diplomatic crisis. It was the beginning of a fundamental shift in how the royal family would operate. The question now was whether this change would be temporary or mark the start of a new era. Back at Clarence's house, Camilla had spent the evening reading and reflecting on her own role within the family. She wasn't bitter about the developments she knew were unfolding, but she couldn't deny feeling a sense of relief at the prospect of reduced pressure. Perhaps it was time to find a different way to contribute, one that played to her strengths without exposing her to constant public scrutiny. The following week brought confirmation that the previous day's events had been more than just a temporary arrangement. Charles had spent considerable time in consultation with his most trusted advisors, and the consensus was clear. Kate's expanded role should continue and develop further. The success of her diplomatic engagement had impressed everyone involved, from foreign dignitaries to palace staff. Kate found herself adjusting to a dramatically different schedule. Her calendar, once filled primarily with charitable engagements and family obligations, now included briefings on international affairs, economic policy discussions, and strategic planning meetings. The transition was demanding but exhilarating, and she approached each new responsibility with the thorough preparation that had always characterized her work. The public response to Kate's increased visibility was overwhelmingly positive. News outlets praised her poise and effectiveness, while social media buzzed with admiration for her handling of complex situations. Foreign press coverage was particularly enthusiastic, with several major publications running feature stories about the new face of the British monarchy. Charles watched these developments with a mixture of pride and strategic satisfaction. His decision to lean more heavily on Kate was proving wise on multiple levels. Not only was she handling the responsibilities with exceptional skill, but her presence was also bringing a fresh energy to royal engagements that had become somewhat predictable over the years. However, the changes were not without their challenges. Palace staff had to quickly adapt to new protocols and reporting structures. Some long-established routines needed modification, and there were inevitable moments of confusion as everyone adjusted to the evolving dynamics. Charles worked closely with his private secretary to ensure these transitions happened as smoothly as possible. Meanwhile, Camilla's gradual withdrawal from public duties was becoming more noticeable. Royal watchers began speculating about her health and commitment to royal life. The palace maintained its standard policy of not commenting on personal matters, but the questions were becoming harder to deflect with simple statements about scheduling adjustments. In reality, Camilla was experiencing a complex mix of emotions about the changes taking place around her. Relief was certainly present. The constant pressure and scrutiny had been wearing on her for months. But there was also a sense of loss, as many of her royal duties had become meaningful parts of her identity over the years. She found herself spending more time on private charitable work, focusing on causes that had always been close to her heart, but had sometimes been overshadowed by more formal royal obligations. This quieter approach to service felt more natural and sustainable, though she remained uncertain about how long-term these arrangements might become. Charles made a point of checking in with Camilla regularly during this period of transition. Their conversations were honest and supportive, reflecting the deep partnership that had sustained their relationship through many challenges. Camilla appreciated his concern while also feeling grateful that he wasn't pressuring her to maintain her previous level of public engagement. "I think this might be exactly what we both needed," Camilla told Charles during one of their evening walks through the palace gardens. "You get the support you need from Kate, and I get the space to contribute in ways that feel more authentic to who I am." Charles nodded thoughtfully. "I've been worried that you might feel displaced or undervalued in all of this." "Not at all," Camilla replied with genuine warmth. "Kate is extraordinary at what she does, and watching her succeed brings me joy rather than jealousy. I'm proud to be part of a family that can adapt and evolve when circumstances require it." These conversations strengthened Charles's confidence that the changes were beneficial for everyone involved. The royal family was demonstrating its ability to respond flexibly to new challenges while maintaining its core values and commitments. Kate, meanwhile, was developing her own perspective on the expanded role. The work was demanding and sometimes overwhelming, but she found it deeply fulfilling. Her background in art history and her years of observing royal life had prepared her better than she might have expected for the complex cultural and diplomatic aspects of her new responsibilities. She was particularly effective in meetings with younger world leaders and in discussions about modernizing traditional royal practices. Her ability to bridge generational differences while respecting established protocols made her valuable in ways that went beyond simply filling gaps in Charles's schedule. The international community was taking notice as well. Several foreign governments specifically requested Kate's involvement in upcoming state visits and diplomatic initiatives. This level of direct international recognition was unusual for someone in her position and spoke to the genuine impact she was having on Britain's global relationships. As the week progressed, it became clear that what had started as a temporary response to immediate challenges was evolving into a more permanent restructuring of royal responsibilities. The question was no longer whether Kate could handle expanded duties, but rather how extensively those duties should grow and how the family should formally acknowledge her enhanced role. 3 weeks into the new arrangement, an unexpected crisis tested the sustainability of the changes that had been gradually taking shape. Charles woke up feeling particularly unwell, experiencing the kind of fatigue and discomfort that his doctors had warned might become more frequent. The timing was especially challenging, as a crucial Commonwealth summit was scheduled to begin in just 2 days. The Commonwealth gathering represented one of the most important events on the royal calendar, bringing together leaders from dozens of nations for discussions that would shape international relationships for years to come. Traditionally, the monarch's presence and active participation were considered essential for the summit's success. Charles's medical team was called in for an emergency consultation. While their assessment wasn't alarming, they strongly recommended against the demanding schedule that the summit would require. The king faced a difficult decision: push through his discomfort and risk his health, or find an alternative approach that had never been tested at such a high-profile event. Kate received the urgent call while she was attending a children's charity event in Manchester. The gravity of the situation was immediately clear from the tone of Charles's private secretary. She would need to return to London immediately and prepare to potentially represent the Crown at the Commonwealth Summit in ways that went far beyond anything she had done before. The flight back to London gave Kate time to process the magnitude of what was being asked of her. The Commonwealth Summit wasn't just another diplomatic gathering. It was a cornerstone event that required deep knowledge of complex historical relationships, current political dynamics, and subtle cultural sensitivities spanning multiple continents. Upon arriving at Buckingham Palace, Kate found Charles in his study surrounded by briefing documents and looking more tired than she had seen him in months. Despite his obvious discomfort, his mind remained sharp and focused on ensuring the summit's success regardless of his own participation level. "Kate, I need to be completely honest with you about what we're facing," Charles began without his usual conversational preamble. "The doctors are insisting that I significantly reduce my involvement in the summit. That means you would need to step into a role that no Princess of Wales has ever undertaken at this level." The weight of the moment settled between them. Kate understood that this wasn't just about filling in for missed meetings or ceremonies. She would be representing the British Crown in discussions that could affect millions of people across the Commonwealth nations. The responsibility was both honor and burden. "What does that actually mean in practical terms?" Kate asked, her voice steady despite the enormity of what was being discussed. Charles pulled out a detailed schedule that had been hastily revised by palace officials. "You would lead the opening ceremony, chair several key working sessions, and handle the bilateral meetings with Commonwealth leaders. Most importantly, you would deliver the keynote address that traditionally sets the tone for the entire summit." Kate studied the documents, her mind racing through the implications. She had been gradually building relationships with many Commonwealth leaders, but this would require her to engage with them as the primary representative of the British monarchy. The diplomatic and symbolic significance was unprecedented. Meanwhile, news of Charles's potential reduced participation was carefully managed by the palace communications team. Official statements spoke of scheduling, adjustments, and delegation of responsibilities, language designed to convey confidence, while avoiding speculation about the king's health. Camilla's response to these developments revealed the depth of her character and the strength of her relationship with both Charles and Kate. Rather than feeling left out of the crisis management, she immediately offered to support Kate in whatever ways would be most helpful. Her decades of experience in royal life, including many Commonwealth events, made her insights particularly valuable. The key to Commonwealth relationships is understanding that respect goes both ways, Camilla advised Kate during a private conversation. These leaders aren't just looking for British leadership. They want partnership and genuine engagement with their concerns and perspectives. The next 24 hours involved intensive preparation, unlike anything Kate had experienced. Foreign policy experts provided rapid briefings on current issues affecting each Commonwealth nation. Cultural advisors offered guidance on protocol variations and sensitive topics. Speechwriters worked around the clock to prepare remarks that would strike the right balance of authority and accessibility. Kate's natural learning, ability, and her years of observing royal engagement served her well. During this compressed preparation period, she absorbed information quickly, while asking questions that demonstrated her growing understanding of the complex dynamics at play. Her approach was methodical but not rigid, thorough but not overwhelming. Charles insisted on participating in the preparation sessions despite his medical team's recommendations for rest. His determination to ensure Kate's success overrode his own discomfort, though he was careful to pace himself and focus on the most crucial elements of guidance and support. As the summit's opening day approached, word of Kate's expanded role began to leak to international media. The response was largely positive, with many commentators praising the monarchy's adaptability and Kate's proven track record of effective representation. Some questioned whether such a significant departure from tradition was appropriate, but these voices were largely outnumbered by expressions of confidence and support. The stage was set for what would either be a triumph that established Kate as a major figure in international diplomacy, or a challenge that would test the limits of her abilities and the monarchy's flexibility. Either way, the Commonwealth Summit would mark a turning point that none of them could have anticipated just a month earlier. The morning of the Commonwealth Summit arrived with unusual tension in the air at Buckingham Palace. Kate woke before dawn, her mind immediately focusing on the historic day ahead. She had spent the previous evening in final preparation sessions, but now the moment had come to put theory into practice on one of the world's most important diplomatic stages. Charles made the difficult decision to attend the opening ceremony despite his medical team's concerns. His presence would provide symbolic continuity and demonstrate that the monarchy remained strong, even as responsibilities shifted to accommodate new realities. However, he would limit his participation to essential moments, allowing Kate to take the lead in most interactions. The Great Hall at Lancaster House had been transformed for the summit's opening ceremony. Flags from all Commonwealth nations created a colorful display that emphasized the diversity and unity of the organization. World leaders began arriving early, many of them curious about the adjusted arrangements they had been informed about through diplomatic channels. Kate's entrance drew immediate attention from both delegates and media representatives. Her choice of attire struck the perfect balance between formal dignity and accessible warmth. She wore a deep blue ensemble that subtly incorporated Commonwealth symbols, a detail that several foreign leaders immediately noticed and appreciated. The opening ceremony proceeded with carefully choreographed precision. Charles delivered brief welcoming remarks that acknowledged the significance of the gathering, while graciously introducing Kate's expanded role. His words were measured and confident, giving no indication of the personal challenges that had necessitated these changes. When Kate rose to deliver her keynote address, the hall fell into expectant silence. This speech would set the tone for the entire summit and establish her credibility as a serious player in international affairs. She had worked with speechwriters, but the final version reflected her own voice and perspective on Commonwealth relationships. Distinguished leaders, friends and partners, Kate began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall without betraying any nervousness she might have felt. We gather today not as nations defined by our differences, but as communities united by shared values and common aspirations for our people's futures. Her address touched on economic cooperation, environmental challenges, and social justice issues that resonated across Commonwealth boundaries. She spoke with knowledge and passion, but also with humility that acknowledged the diverse experiences and perspectives represented in the room. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with several leaders nodding approvingly and taking notes. Following the ceremony, Kate moved into the bilateral meetings that would consume much of the summit. These one-on-one discussions required her to shift rapidly between different diplomatic styles and cultural approaches. Her preparation showed as she demonstrated familiarity with each nation's specific concerns and priorities. The Prime Minister of Canada, a woman who had worked closely with the royal family for several years, was particularly impressed with Kate's grasp of trade issues affecting both nations. "Your Royal Highness, your understanding of our agricultural export challenges is remarkably thorough," she commented during their meeting. "This level of engagement will make our discussions much more productive." Charles monitored the proceedings from a private viewing room, staying informed without placing additional strain on his energy reserves. Palace staff provided regular updates on Kate's progress, and the reports were consistently positive. Foreign leaders were responding well to her direct but respectful communication style. Camilla spent the day at Clarence House, following the summit coverage on television and through regular updates from palace staff. She felt proud watching Kate's confident performance, but also experienced moments of reflection about her own relationship with these high-pressure public events. The contrast between Kate's obvious energy and her own recent fatigue was striking, but not painful. During a brief break between meetings, Kate called Camilla to check in and share her excitement about how well the day was progressing. "I keep thinking about your advice yesterday," Kate said. "The emphasis on partnership rather than leadership is making all the difference in these conversations." As the day continued, it became clear that Kate's approach was generating genuine enthusiasm among Commonwealth leaders. Several requested extended discussions beyond their scheduled time slots, and multiple nations indicated interest in strengthening their bilateral relationships with Britain through continued engagement with Kate personally. The evening reception provided an opportunity for more informal interactions that often prove crucial for international relationship building. Kate moved through the room with natural grace, engaging in conversations that ranged from serious policy discussions to lighter exchanges about family and shared interests. The President of Ghana, a respected elder statesman among Commonwealth leaders, pulled Kate aside during the reception. "Your Royal Highness, I want you to know that your presence here today has reinvigorated our commitment to Commonwealth cooperation. Your generation brings hope for addressing challenges that have persisted too long." Media coverage of the summit's first day was overwhelmingly positive. International news outlets praised Kate's poise and effectiveness, while British press celebrated what they characterized as a new chapter in royal diplomacy. Social media response was equally enthusiastic, with many commentators noting the fresh energy Kate brought to traditionally formal proceedings. By the evening's end, it was clear that the day had been an unqualified success. Kate had not only met the high expectations placed on her, but had exceeded them in ways that surprised even her strongest supporters. The challenge now would be maintaining this level of performance throughout the remainder of the summit, while processing the personal and institutional implications of what had been accomplished. Charles retired early that evening, but not before expressing his profound gratitude and pride in Kate's performance. The day had proven that the monarchy's evolution could strengthen rather than weaken its effectiveness on the world stage. The second day of the Commonwealth Summit brought unexpected developments that would test Kate's diplomatic skills in ways her preparation hadn't anticipated. A dispute between two member nations over trade agreements threatened to overshadow the summit's collaborative spirit, and traditional diplomatic channels had failed to find common ground. Kate found herself in the unusual position of being asked to mediate between leaders who had been unable to resolve their differences through conventional means. The request came from the Commonwealth Secretary-General, who had observed Kate's effective leadership during the previous day's sessions and believed her fresh perspective might break the deadlock. The situation required delicate handling. Both nations were important Commonwealth partners with legitimate concerns about economic fairness and trade balance. Previous attempts at resolution had become bogged down in historical grievances and procedural disputes that seemed to multiply rather than diminish over time. Charles was consulted about Kate's potential mediation role, despite his limited energy reserves. His experience with similar situations throughout his royal career provided valuable context for understanding the sensitivities involved. Sometimes an outsider can see solutions that those directly involved Cannot, he advised Kate during their brief morning consultation. The mediation session took place in a smaller conference room away from the main summit activities. Kate's approach was straightforward but respectful, focusing on shared interests rather than past disagreements. She listened carefully to both sides, asking questions that helped clarify underlying concerns and identify potential areas of compromise. I'm hearing that both of your nations want to ensure fair access to markets while protecting your domestic industries. Kate summarized after extensive discussion. Perhaps we can explore ways to achieve both goals through phased implementation and mutual support mechanisms. Her suggestions weren't revolutionary, but they were presented in language that allowed both sides to feel their core concerns had been understood and addressed. The breakthrough came when she proposed a pilot program that would test new approaches on a small scale before implementing broader changes. Meanwhile, Camilla spent the morning visiting a local literacy charity, one of her long-standing personal interests that didn't require the high-profile attention she had been avoiding. The work felt meaningful and sustainable in ways that formal state functions had increasingly failed to provide. She found herself wondering whether this quieter approach to royal service might actually allow her to make more authentic contributions. The successful mediation enhanced Kate's reputation among Commonwealth leaders even further. Word of her effective intervention spread quickly through diplomatic channels, with several other nations requesting her input on their own challenging issues. The summit was evolving into something more dynamic and productive than anyone had originally envisioned. International media coverage reflected the excitement around Kate's expanded role. Major newspapers ran analyses of her diplomatic style, comparing her approach favorably to seasoned international leaders. The coverage was particularly positive in Commonwealth nations, where her inclusive communication style was seen as refreshingly different from traditional British diplomatic approaches. Charles monitored these developments with mixed emotions. Pride in Kate's success was overwhelming, but he also recognized that the spotlight shift represented a fundamental change in how the monarchy functioned. His own role was becoming more strategic and less operational, a transition that required significant psychological adjustment. The summit's final day brought ceremonial activities that traditionally fell to the monarch personally. Kate would be delivering the closing address and participating in symbolic activities that would be remembered long after the specific policy discussions were forgotten. The pressure was different but no less significant than the diplomatic challenges she had already navigated. Preparation for the closing ceremony involved careful coordination with palace protocol experts who had never before planned such events around anyone other than the reigning monarch. Every detail required consideration of both tradition and innovation, ensuring respect for established customs while acknowledging the new realities of royal representation. Kate's closing address was crafted to acknowledge the summit's achievements, while looking forward to future Commonwealth cooperation. She had insisted on including personal reflections on what she had learned from the experience, believing that authentic communication was more important than purely formal remarks. This gathering has reminded me that the Commonwealth's strength lies not in uniformity, but in our ability to learn from our differences while working toward common goals, Kate said in her closing remarks. The conversations we have shared over these days will shape our relationships for years to come. The response to her address was immediate and enthusiastic. Several leaders spoke privately with Kate after the ceremony, expressing hope for continued engagement and partnership. The president of Kenya mentioned that Kate's approach had reminded her of the Commonwealth's founding ideals in ways that recent summits had sometimes failed to achieve. As the summit concluded, palace staff began the complex work of processing the implications of what had occurred. Kate's success had been so complete that questions arose about whether this level of responsibility should become permanent rather than temporary. The international community's positive response suggested that such changes would be welcomed rather than resisted. Charles spent his final summit evening in private reflection about the monarchy's future direction. The events of the past few days had demonstrated that effective royal leadership could take forms he hadn't previously considered. Kate's success hadn't diminished his own role so much as it had expanded the possibilities for royal influence and effectiveness. The transformation that had begun with a simple conversation between Charles and Kate had evolved into something much more significant. The Commonwealth Summit had served as both testing ground and launching pad for changes that would likely influence the monarchy for generations to come. 6 months after the Commonwealth Summit, the transformation within the royal family had become the new normal rather than a temporary adjustment. Kate's expanded role had evolved naturally into a permanent arrangement that strengthened the monarchy's effectiveness while allowing each family member to contribute according to their strengths and circumstances. The change was most visible in the palace's daily rhythms. Kate's schedule now included regular briefings on international affairs, weekly meetings with government ministers, and frequent consultations on policy matters that would have previously been handled exclusively by Charles. Her office had grown to include additional staff members with expertise in areas ranging from diplomatic, protocol to economic analysis. Charles had adapted to his modified role with surprising grace and satisfaction. Rather than feeling diminished by sharing responsibilities, he found that Kate's capabilities allowed him to focus on areas where his experience and perspective were most valuable. Their collaboration had developed into an effective partnership that drew on both of their strengths. The public response to these changes had been overwhelmingly positive. Opinion polls showed increased confidence in the monarchy's future, with particular appreciation for Kate's modern approach to traditional responsibilities. International media coverage consistently praised the royal family's adaptability and Kate's growing influence on global affairs. Camilla had found her own path through this period of change, developing a portfolio of private charitable work that felt more authentic and sustainable than her previous public schedule. She maintained important ceremonial duties but had stepped away from the constant pressure of high-profile engagements that had been wearing on her energy and enthusiasm. "I feel like I'm contributing more meaningfully now than I was when I was trying to be everywhere at once," Camilla told Charles during one of their regular evening conversations. "Kate is extraordinary at the public-facing work, and I'm more effective when I can focus on the causes that truly matter to me." The relationship between Kate and Camilla had deepened throughout this transition period. Rather than creating tension or competition, the redistribution of responsibilities had allowed them to support each other in ways that played to their individual strengths. Camilla's guidance had been invaluable as Kate navigated the complexities of expanded royal duties. Palace staff had also adapted well to the new arrangements. Initial concerns about protocol changes and reporting structures had given way to appreciation for the increased efficiency and effectiveness that resulted from better matching responsibilities to individual capabilities and interests. International recognition of Kate's role continued to grow. Several foreign governments had specifically requested her involvement in upcoming state visits and diplomatic initiatives. The United Nations had invited her to serve as a special ambassador for women's economic empowerment, a role that would allow her to combine royal duties with advocacy for causes she cared deeply about. Charles watched these developments with genuine pride and strategic satisfaction. The monarchy's evolution had not only addressed immediate challenges but had also positioned the institution for long-term success. Kate's generation was bringing fresh perspectives and energy that would be crucial for maintaining royal relevance in a changing world. The children had adapted to their mother's expanded role with remarkable resilience. Careful scheduling ensured that family time remained protected, while the older children had begun to show interest in their mother's work and its global significance. These early exposures to international affairs would likely influence their own future contributions to royal life. Media coverage had settled into a new normal that reflected the established nature of the changed arrangements. Rather than treating Kate's prominence as a temporary novelty, news outlets now covered her activities as natural elements of royal operations. This normalization represented a crucial step in cementing the sustainability of the new structure. Behind the scenes, palace officials were already planning for further evolution in royal responsibilities. Kate's success had demonstrated the value of flexibility and adaptation, suggesting that other adjustments might be beneficial as circumstances continue to change. The monarchy was proving its ability to remain relevant and effective by embracing change rather than resisting it. Charles's health had stabilized during this period, benefiting from the reduced pressure and more sustainable schedule that the new arrangements allowed. His medical team noted improvements in both his energy levels and overall well-being, suggesting that the changes had been beneficial for his personal health as well as institutional effectiveness. As the first anniversary of their initial conversation approached, Charles and Kate reflected on how much had changed and how natural the current arrangements had become. What had begun as a response to immediate challenges had evolved into a transformation that strengthened the monarchy's foundation for future generations. I never imagined that our conversation about sharing responsibilities would lead to such significant changes, Kate said during one of their regular strategy meetings, but it feels like we found a way forward that serves everyone's interests while strengthening our ability to serve the country and Commonwealth. Charles nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes the best solutions emerge when we're willing to question assumptions and try new approaches. You've proven that the monarchy can evolve while maintaining its essential character and values. The transformation had created a model for royal leadership that balanced tradition with innovation, personal well-being with public service, and individual strengths with collective effectiveness. As they looked toward the future, all three members of this royal triangle felt confident that they had found sustainable ways to serve their roles while honoring their authentic selves and relationships. The story that had begun with concerns about pressure and sustainability had evolved into a testament to the power of honest communication, mutual support, and willingness to embrace change when circumstances demanded it. The royal family had not only navigated a challenging period, but had emerged stronger and more effective than before.